We got to break Sariba up. Sariba is a cartel.
We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tells you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because, let me tell you something, this is Dart Island. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Word of Mouth. Just starting a little bit late this morning. We were trying to work out some of the bugs that we had on our screen with the green and stuff. We got a little bit of it out, but we're still working on it. And what we need to do is get different things going on and get it fixed and sorted out. But we'll be doing that over the course of a couple of days, and hopefully by next week we'll have it all sorted out. But yeah, so I'm just going to do a quick broadcast this morning, and then we're going to go in trying to get all of the other stuff sorted with the new background and different things that we have. It may seem a little bit darker today because we turned the light off to try to eliminate some of the green coverage that was taking over the screen. So it seems like it's a little bit better here this morning, but we'll work it out. One thing I want to talk about this morning is I attended the district meeting in Northside last night for the consultation for the NRA East-West Arterial Road, just to listen to what the presentation was, and obviously take in all of those people who had their concerns and whatnot. This is the flyer that was handed out at the Civic Center last night, and it has quite a bit of information. So the next meeting is on Thursday in Savannah, in the Savannah area. So I encourage anybody who's in that area to come out and listen to that presentation. Two things that stuck out to me. There was a report that was done by a group called Sustainable Cayman. And it's funny that this group called Sustainable Cayman isn't really made up of any generational Caymanians. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to try to create some divide between who a Caymanian is and who a Caymanian isn't. The reality is that the fact that you have some people on this island who we've accepted as Caymanians or been here long enough to get some sort of paper that call themselves Caymanian, right? Because these days, you just never know what Caymanian is, right? I got proof that I a Caymanian. My children got proof that they're Caymanians, right? But at the end of the day, it's just where we've reached in our society. But the things I want to point out are very, very important. And there was a very interesting first meeting because, as I said earlier, it was held in the Northside district, and obviously that's where the minister for this particular portfolio is from, the Honorable J.E. Banks. And what I thought was very interesting in the grand scheme of things is that you had Mr. Arden McLean and Ezra Miller, who both attended the meeting and both spoke too. We'll get into that in a minute, but I just want to lay up to all of the questions, because it was a presentation done by the panel of the people who are carrying out the EIA study, and they went into at length on what it is they were going to be doing and what they were trying to accomplish. The one thing I want to point out is that the premier was on Radio Cayman earlier this week, and he said something that was very interesting, and I agree with him. He said that the EIA report was not to determine whether the project should be done or not done. It was to determine the most sustainable way that it can be done. It was so that the AIA report would point out all of the unforeseen issues that we don't know about now. Hence the reason why the study need to be done, and that once that study is done and they can identify and they can come up with a strategy to try to mitigate some of the environmental issues that may have been raised by other members of society. Now, there was a mixed views. There was a lot of mixed views in regards to why we should and why we shouldn't, from various people within the hall that last night. And one of the things that stuck out to me that was very interesting is that some of the reasonings behind why we should be looking into certain areas of why we're building the road and whatnot. And again, and you know how I am already. I call a spade, and I express exactly how I feel here without any apology or without any fear of contradiction. So, looking at the road, and they illustrated the social economic benefits and issues that we're experiencing from people spending hours in traffic, and the cost of that when they highlighted the hours that the average person spent in traffic, and they added it up and they calculated how much revenue is being lost and productivity is being lost. It was very eye opening. It was a tremendous amount of hours and money, and I'm very grateful that I went, because it made me more aware of some of the impacts that is actually happening, um, and being a direct cause of people being stuck in traffic. Now, a couple of the questions that was asked by the public and persons within the audience, that I thought was very interesting. One person in particular, who is a person who is from Northside, born and raised. I don't really know his name, so of course I wouldn't call his name even if I did. But he was suggesting that we shouldn't build a road because of fear of future development. Okay, and to each his own. And I don't have any objections to his point of view or his opinion. Certainly, I don't have any issues. But at the end of the day, um, we must understand that in the current situation that we have, we can't expect for our planning department to continue granting permission for development, housing, and all sorts of residential and commercial areas in which is going to create an infrastructural stream on our society, and on our island as a whole. But yet, when it's time to build roads to accommodate some of this development and home building, we have an issue. Now, what was interesting to me is that the person, again, a Northsider, was very adamant on why he thought it was a bad idea to build this road because of fear of people developing along that corridor. I find it comical, because I didn't ask any questions last night. I'll wait till Savannah come and I'll ask my questions. But what was interesting is that every single person that was there, whether they supported or they were against, live in an area that had to be developed, and not only by way of supermarkets, schools, and, banks, and all these other things, but had to be developed for a road in order for them to access their house, in which they live. Everybody seemed to be fine when it's accommodating to them, and they don't have an issue with it. And I just thought it was it was something that I was a bit taken back by, because you know it was until Mr. Ezard said his piece that there was some clarity on some of the things that was misconceived over the years, and still is misconceived by a lot of the fly by night environmentalists. Now, I don't have a problem with anybody who is environmentalist sensitive and want to secure the environment. I don't have a problem with any of those people at all. It's the reasons behind why some people get involved to be a part of the environmental push that I have a problem with. You know, I just think that it's unfortunate that sustainable Cayman is largely made up of individuals who are not generational Caymanians, who are not persons who understand the lay of the land completely. And it's funny, because those same persons live in areas that was swampland, that was filled in, and they live on it. But they'll tell you, oh, we don't tear down no trees and we plant trees. Okay, Great. But these are the same people that have steak nights. And the largest contributor to CO2 gases on the planet is methane, and that's created by cow. Anyway, agriculture farming is the largest impactor when it comes to polluting air. But again, these are the individuals that we have to deal with. How in the world that we have come to a point, and Mr. Arden McLean said something repeatedly, actually, that was very interesting. In fact, it's concerning, and a lot of people should take it serious, because it's not because of his mannerisms, of his demeanor, or the way he articulated why people should look at it differently. You got to listen to what he said and how and what he meant by what he said. And the thing is that we've come to a point now where all these people who we've allowed to come to Cayman and call Cayman home, and even to the extent to call themselves Caymanians, are the only people objecting of other Caymanians getting something that is going to alleviate some of the social issues and the stress that they have. I mean, when I listen to these to the reasons behind these people having an issue, it really blew my mind. It really blew my mind, because these same people live in areas where it's far worse, and they contribute far worse issues to the environment than this particular issue. And I just don't get it. I saw the article that Wendy Ledger put on CNS, which was an opinion by a UK office. It's circulating. Sustainable Cayman is sending it to everybody and their brother. I got a copy on email and I read it. And what's really comical about that is that all of the comments on CNS is based on an overseas opinion of somebody who's never been to Cayman. The person that wrote that report and the suggestions that they made clearly indicated, as Arden highlighted very, very, very forceful last night, that person could have never been to the Cayman Islands, based on his suggestions and how we should try to mitigate some of the traffic. He suggested that we should ride bicycles to work, have a parking lot in Georgetown. He also suggested that we should widen the road through Bordentown. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody is familiar with the Cayman Islands, and certainly familiar with the first capital, Bordentown, and know how close all those homes are to the roadside. In fact, some people's walls are right on the road. So the suggestion of widening the road in Bordentown is also suggesting that the government would have to buy out all that property to widen the roads, just to alleviate a small corridor of traffic. I think that in his last summary in that report, it actually said that the project that the government is proposing is doable once certain things are taken into consideration. Now, I don't know who paid for that report. I will only assume that the Sustainable Cayman group might have got some sponsors. I mean, obviously, Melanie Carmichael is the person who heading that up. And remember now, Melanie Carmichael is an individual who lives in South Sound. She's a stay-at-home mom. She ain't got no job, okay? And I can say that because I know them, because they all was helping us with CPR. So I've had an inside view of how they operate. And they want, and I don't understand, they all run from their country to come Cayman, and then they try and turn Cayman into their country. Why didn't they just stay home? I don't get it. And I'm not telling anybody to go away. I'm just simply saying, you come here, you live by our rules. You adapt, you call yourself a Caymanian, do what we do. And the thing that really blows my mind is that the only people that ever object to anything that benefits Cayman is people who have come here and call themselves Caymanian. And I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of because I can't go to England and tell them not to build a palace on stolen land. I can't go to England and tell them to empty out the museums with all the stolen stuff, the artifacts they got, and then give it back to the native countries. I can't go to England and do any of that. I certainly can't go to no other neighboring country and tell them what to do. Even if I've been there long enough to call myself one of them, I can't go and tell them what to do. But somehow we have adopted and accepted people who have come here, stayed long enough, called Cayman home, and then, and like I said, even to the extent to call themselves Caymanians, they're the ones that objecting to everything that benefit Cayman and Caymanians. Ezard's contribution last night was very, very, very impactful, simply because what he said shed a lot of light on situations that people were misinformed about, including Melanie Carmichael. She thinks she's this great white hope that's going to save the Cayman Islands from itself and its people. And that's the thing that bothers me most of all. Go back to England. Take your daddy with you too. Because we all know the history of her father. But somehow that's accepted. That's accepted, and everybody go willy-nilly, like, okay. But the minute that Mario called the governor wife a liar, they arrested me. It's okay for them to step outside the boundaries, but it's not okay for us to step outside the boundaries or even pretend without being reprimanded or being victimized. And I'm tired of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here fighting against one or the other. I'm just simply saying I'm tired of people coming to Cayman who are not from Cayman, staying in Cayman long enough to be a part of our landscape, and then going to the extent to even be called a Caymanian. And then these are the same people that telling us that we can't do certain things in our country because we need to protect this. Let me tell you something. The misconception of the Mastic Trail was clarified last night. And there was a lady in there that asked a question. Again, another person who come here and been here long enough to call herself a Caymanian. Right? Her question is, what about the noise from the road that it'll cause on the Mastic Trail? And I'm saying to myself, well, what about all of the other roads that exist? So that means we should just close down that West Bay Road then, that go to Badabino. Let's just close that down then. Because the last thing we want is for the cars to disturb the trees that next to that road, because that's what she's suggesting, right? And Ezra had to get up and eloquently inform the misinformed public on what the Mastic Trail really is and why it was formed. The Mastic Trail was started to access fertile land for farming. It wasn't for somebody to come in with their dog and go walking and call it a sanctuary or it was the Mastic Trail was formed and created so that the local people can access land that had fertile grounds that they could farm on. Now, at the end of the day, again, like I said, I am for preservation of environment, the best and the most sustainable way we can. But they wasn't talking about sustainability. They wasn't talking about any of that. They were talking about, well, why would you do this? It's not going to fix the traffic problem. The one thing that I liked about some of the answers that were given by the panel, they were very informed. And I just want to say, kudos to the NRA for having a well-equipped team of people and prepared to answer most of the questions, because some of the questions were ridiculous. And Mr. Billy Adams, you're a Caymanian, you're a son of the soil, but sometimes you could really, really embarrass us and act stupidness and go on as if we're all just dumb. You talked about reports about national road transportation. I'm not business about none of that. I can't imagine that we're going to continue to harp on foolishness that we didn't do and not focus on the things that we need to do now. And that meeting last night, I tell you, it was comical sometimes, and then it became very, very, concerning sometimes. And when I looked at the whole grand scheme of things, as I started out the conversation this morning by saying the premier was on Radio Cayman, and he rightfully said that the EIA report was to determine the best sustainable way on how we can go forward with this project. And I think that that's what should be allowed to happen, is get the EIA report. And then there were some other important details of the project that no one knew about until Arden highlighted it in his contribution last night, because there is a portion of that road from Hearst Road to Lookout that had already been cleared off. There was no wetlands, and there was a conversation on the difference between areas and why it's called wetlands and whatnot, right? And what Arden highlighted was very interesting, actually. There is a section of the road that should have already been paved because it had already been cleared off, because there was no wetlands in that area between Hearst Road and Lookout. Should have been paved already. So an EIA report wasn't required for that section of the road. Now, the rest of it that goes further east, that goes through some of the wetlands, yes, of course, that need to be properly assessed before we move forward. Now, what I'm most interested in now is, why is it that because we are engaging in a public consultation and a roadshow to try to get information and feedback from the public, I just didn't see and then the thing is that really blows my mind is how Wendy Ledger and CNS decided to post the overseas assessment of this road. And then she puts an article that says that an opinion, this article that she posted on her page suggests that the East-West Arterial Road, isn't necessary. And the funny thing is with it is that her seeing one drove up there in her gas guzzling combustion engine car to go up there to fight for environment. This is the most oxymoronic, hypocritical thing I ever see in my life. When I saw her last night, the first thing I said to her, I said, "Hey, Wendy, how did you get here? Did you drive your combustion engine car?" And she laughed. She said, "No, I couldn't ride my bicycle." The thing is that I get it that we need all elements of society to create some sort of checks and balances and pivot. I get it. But when you're overly critical about something and you don't have any substance to back up what it is you're critical about, that's where it makes me believe that you're a bit biased. You're not being fair, and you're not being receptive to all of the different variations of the conversation and the topic at hand. So that in itself. Now, obviously, they had all of these illustrations of the wetlands and whatever. And like Ezra and Arden pointed out, he said, in Georgetown, West Bay Road corridor, they call it swamp because they want to develop it and they didn't want no issues. But when it comes up to the Eastern District, they call it wetlands. When it all in the same, right? But the truth of the matter is that when you look at the drawings and you look at the gazetted road and where it's projected to go, it actually goes through a lot of undeveloped areas, and some of the major concerns are, noise, pollution, and those things, right? There was this one lady, again, not calling any names, I know her very well too. She happens to live in Parkway, which is right across from 7 Mile Shops on the West Bay Road corridor. And her illustration was, she never said that you mustn't build a road. She never said that, so to her credit. But what she said, her concern was, I know she lived West Bay Road, is that when they first built the Hartwell bypass, it was a 1-lane road on either side, so 2 lanes. So the noise was minimal, and that she can go in her backyard, in her garden, in peace and quiet. But when they turn it into 4-lane road and whatnot, she hear all the dump trucks and the Jake brakes, and I agree with her on that. We need to ban Jake's brakes in this country because Jake brakes on these dump trucks is a Jamaican habit, not a Cayman habit. And Jake brakes are for going up and down hills. Cayman ain't got no hills. So the licensing department, the government really need to ban Jake brakes. And on that vein, she's correct on that. But you don't need to be next to a road to hear a Jake brake. I don't care where you are, because Cayman is flat and sound travel. So you can hear it from a long distance. So yes, we need to ban Jake brakes on dump trucks, plain and simple. Licensing department should put that as a stipulation. Say, listen, Jake brakes will come off or you can't get your truck license. End of story. I don't care who like it. But her contribution was that the noise and the 4-lane road created all this noise, so she can no longer go peacefully in her backyard. And I'm saying to myself, here is a person that lived downwind of the smell of the dump when the wind changed. Now, you can't hear wind unless it's blowing like hurricane, but you can certainly smell it. So I don't know what she do on the days when the dump stinking out her backyard, because she in Parkway, which is right next across the street from the dump. So again, are we going to stop a well-needed road simply because these concerns are gonna be the deterrent? I don't think so, because then we'd have to close every other road in Cayman. The reality is that when the question asks whether or not would this solve the problem of the traffic problem coming from the Eastern Districts because there's a bottleneck at the Grand Harbor roundabout, and that's a very fair question, and they're absolutely right. But the person that answered the question, I can't remember her name, she answered the question and she said, well, NRA is currently engaged with other solutions in and out of the bottleneck areas in order to create alleviation, and that is working on one end and they're working on the other end. Now, one thing that I heard Jonathan Adams said, and I agree with him, and his father was opposed, but he wasn't, and he just and what he said about the roundabout by Hurl is you need to put an overpass, that people who are going into the Eastern Districts don't have to traverse the roundabout going into Hurley's, Red Bay, Prospect, and those areas. It should be where you have an overpass that those people could be shuttled to and from very easily. And I know that the Bobby Thompson roundabout is now being upgraded and enlarged, and the roads and whatnot. So hopefully that'll be able to get people to and from point A to point B a lot quicker and more efficiently. Now, let's just say the government didn't build this bypass and that never happened, but yet they fixed all these bottleneck areas. You think that's gonna reduce the traffic from the Bordentown from the Bordentown North Side and East End district coming to town? It won't. I know people are gonna leave home before the sun come up, and discussions about people having to get their children ready in the car and feed them in the car and all that, and spending 4 hours in traffic a day. That's ridiculous. Leave home in at night and get home in at night. That's ridiculous. So these things will be highlighted in the Savannah meeting as well, because it goes to Savannah on Thursday night, which is tomorrow. And I encourage those people who live in that area to come out and and take it in. If not, watch the live stream, because it was streaming live. Now, what I will say is that there are a lot of variations of the project that need to be talked about, and I don't believe that it's a situation where we can't build this road. We need to build this road. This road have to be built. And the one thing that Arden highlighted last night that intrigued me the most is that there's a section of the road that could be done right now without an EIA report, because it already been cleared off. So whatever was going to be impacted has already been impacted from 2007. So from 2007 to now, you know how many years ago that was? We need to get that piece of road done, because that'll alleviate a portion of it now for the time being. So, and then the EIA report starts in March, from what I understood, and then that takes normally a year. So by, I guess, next year this time, we'll be coming to the end of that report, and we'll be able to see what the assessment is, and then be able to visualize and formalize a plan on how to move forward with the rest of the road. Now you've all heard me say it on many occasions. On the flip side of things, now I want to see the road go through. There was another question that was asked last night that I thought was very important, and I'm going to investigate that myself personally. When you get to the end of that bypass, there's 2 legs that gets into the Frank Sound area, right? And when I zoomed in on it on Google Earth, I noticed some very interesting lots of land that second little turnoff go to, and I want to know why. As the person in the hall last night asked the question, why? But I see who properties that access, you see. And I know who their buddy was when this was all formalized, because it wasn't Jay that did this, So let's understand, the minister that's in charge of it now wasn't the minister that designed this road, It was the previous ones. So you heard me always say, follow where the road is gazetted. Check all the block and parcels that is along that corridor and nearby. Okay? See who owned those properties. See when they bought them, or if they had owned them and they were handed down or whatever. See when they owned them, and find out if there's any proposed projects to go in and out of there now that the road is being pushed. And there you will find the ulterior motive for getting some certain things done in this country. And that right there, I'm not letting that up, because I already know who they are. I'm not calling the names. There's supposed to be a lot of development in and along that corridor in certain areas in which certain people own land that was rubbing elbow to elbow with their former ministers. So, and I won't be shocked to find out if some of the ministers themselves not involved, but that's yet to be seen when we do the investigation, and we're going to expose them for it. But I guess they thought that they can always do these things on the cloak and dagger and get away with it. But no. We smarter than that. No. This not our generation that allowed them to do these things and get away with it, because they brought us a turkey and a ham and maybe a wash and a dryer every Christmas or every election. No more turkey politics in this country. Those days are over. We're doing investigation, and I don't care how old I get, If we find a smoking gun that I know we're complicit in doing something that wasn't ethically and morally right, we come in front of. I don't care how many grandchildren and I don't care. Because it seemed like these guys go into politics poor and come out fat. Not only literally, But financially, and that got stopped. I'm not saying that a man shouldn't do good for himself and do what's in his best interest and develop his own personal wealth, but you can't do it on the backs of the poor Caymanians. That can't happen. That can't, and then you get away with it, and then you jump up like you're some God Almighty. That can't happen. This whole thing is very revealing, and I want to just thank Ezra Miller for clearing up the misconception about the Mastic Trail and the importance of generational Caymanians who had land that was inherited from their grandfathers or their great grandfathers and grandmothers, that they can access their land and continue to benefit from it and grow their own personal wealth so that they can hand it down to their children, and then their children can do the same, whatever the case. But to have a group of people who not even generational Caymanians to come in here and be allowed to be Caymanians, that's number one. And then two, you are the ones that creating the biggest hindrance of other generational Caymanians from being able to enjoy the continuity and the sustainability of our own environment. That can't happen. That can't happen. The great white hope got to go. And when Arden and Ezra touched on and insinuated that the persons that are against are the persons who live in the high life up in the South Sound corridor, but that's where they are. Yeah. These people not hurting. These are the same people that trying to stop this road, but it ain't gonna happen. Sustainable Cayman need to focus on something else because they're not gonna stop this road. They're not gonna stop this road. But you see, the reality is that whenever anything is to benefit local Caymanian people who are average, you got those people, those same people, because I can remember I grew up on Walker's Road. And I could remember that there's a very prominent family that lives on the South Sound corridor that's on the water, who had turtle grass removed from in the back of their house. And I call it no names. Who had turtle grass removed from the back of their house, because that's where their little beach was and their little pier. I can remember because I used to rake the yard up every Saturday and get $25 from them. So I can remember. But now, those people, those very same people, one or two of them may have died off out of old age, but those very same people are the very same ones that would prevent anybody from even looking at turtle grass. Yeah, them same ones. Oh, they moved turtle grass when it was convenient to them. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very, very concerning problem in this country. And it's not gonna stop until we put our foot down. And yeah, you got some token Caymanians who bought into it too, and that's fine. That's a norm. Not everybody gonna be warriors, and not everybody gonna be fully aware, and not everybody gonna have the bravery to speak publicly about the situations. I don't really care about the victimization. I personally don't care, and everybody know that by now. Let's check some of these comments right quick. Cameron, well, the new road will be a big hub for the 5 o'clock traffic. It'll be dreaming going. Well, the thing is that I think the East-West Ontario Road is not only needed for traffic, it is also needed because the access points in Cayman are limited. And one of the questions that was also brought up is emergency. If something was to happen in the Eastern Districts and then you got the only corridor of road that is leading into Georgetown, if there's, God forbid, some sort of hindrance of that particular corridor, how in the world are you gonna get the person that need to be evacuated or in an emergency to get to the Georgetown or to get to air, whatever? How you gonna get it done? So having alternative routes is definitely for the sustainability and continuity. You need to be able to have alternative routes. So it's not just for alleviation of traffic, it's for many other things. Emergency routes, evacuation, all sorts of things. But normally you don't really see the benefit of these things until they're done. Now, one other question was asked about the potential roundabouts, and I can tell you, Cayman is one big crop circle design, as far as I'm concerned. and we're gonna pretty soon be going in a full circle. But it seems like roundabouts is the solution to some sorts of traffic backup in certain areas. And I think that question was asked. Well, they think the roundabouts are an indicator that in those strategic areas that there will be branch offs to development in those properties. Now, when I look at one of the roundabouts, which is right in between two of the major quarry holes down in the Town area, and I've always said that a new industrial park for warehouses and whatnot should be in those areas on those lands where they blasted the ponds to dig material for aggregate and for construction and whatnot. We should put some warehouse systems in there so that a lot of the industrial work and stuff could be done in those areas. And a lot of the people who work in those areas in town don't have to traverse the town in the morning time. They could stay on this side on that side simply because that's where their place of business is. That in itself would also alleviate some of the traffic. It won't be the magic bullet, but it can help. Other ways of reducing traffic in certain hours is also to put schools on schedules. Because the fact that we got every school in Cayman starting at the same time, that in itself creates chaos. I know that in the United States, and even in Jamaica, they have some school that starts at 11 o'clock. They have some that start in the morning early, some start at 11, so that not all students and buses are on the road and parents dropping children to and from school is on the road at the same time. That tremendously helped. Now, will that be effective in Cayman? I don't know. They should try it. Nothing beats a trial but a failure. And what will happen if you try it for the first 6 months? We all know that when public schools are out and all schools are closed, traffic is a lot better, right? It's 100% factual. We see it all the time. People love the summer. But at the end of the day, there's some things that need to be implemented in order to see how do we move forward. So I was happy with the meeting last night. I'm glad I went. To tell you the truth, I was really, really glad I went. I wouldn't want to miss Arden and Ezard's contribution for anything in the world. It was pretty entertaining. Even Mr. Billy's talking about what he talking about. He's always a conspiracy theorist with him. So, and he talking about all these things. And what he says, the man is very smart, and he does his research. So I'm not saying that anything he said was wrong. I'm just simply saying is that I'm sick of beating that old dead horse and kicking that can down the road. I don't want to hear about a 1972 ground transportation. I don't want to hear about that. I want to hear about the new one and that one that we're going to implement now. I don't want to hear about putting that one on the shelf and forgetting about it. But we can't do nothing about that now. We can't go back to the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. We can't. They're gone. Let's figure out how we're going to deal with stuff now. Because I don't know what relevance talking about a transportation plan that was done in the 70s gonna help building this new road or prevent it. I just don't see. I don't see what the relevance was. I mean, okay, if you want to highlight it, fine. I don't have a problem with that, but you've highlighted it so many times before, and you've got different other platforms you can highlight it on. We were there to talk about this road. So this road needs to be built. And this pamphlet actually has a very, very informative set of information that I think is good. And I can tell you this right now. Let me just state this for the record, I ain't saying this because government asked me to say this, and I'm saying this because this is my personal assessment of what this is. All right? That's why I'm saying this. End of story. Point blank. Done. Okay? So the greenhouse emissions was the most interesting part of it, because also the premier said this week on the same radio show that Cayman has a bigger impact on global warming than China. I don't know how he was so ill-advised to say that, but anyway. And then in this report, it says greenhouse gas emissions 2014 contributed total of 700,000 metric tons of CO2, right? 700,000, right there. China produces 10 million. Just saying. Largest contributor to greenhouse gases in the world. America being number 2. Cayman not even on the top 10 list, but anyway. Somehow, our premier managed to get that wrong. But we're not here to talk about him this morning. We're just here now to talk about this this particular project here. And I was reading some of the comments on the CNS site, and all these comments were based on a botched report that didn't even make sense, that is not even relevant to the current situation. That's the thing that blew my mind. And all these anonymous commenters on CNS, because they always all anonymous, so they come up with some crafty name that don't identify who they really are. They got these guys. These are the most colorful group of people. But you know what I noticed? It's always the same people. Always the same people. And one thing I do know is that CNS ain't never had 10,000 people who commented on anything. They never had 10,000 people who viewed anything. Their followership is weak. I follow them because I don't follow the compass. But again, it's weak. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. To each his own. They can say whatever they want. I don't really care. What I do believe is that we need to get a firm grip on what's going on in Cayman, because we can't allow for these type of things to continue to happen. I don't care who get offended when I say nobody who's not a generational Caymanian can come here, call yourself a Caymanian, and then try to stop other Caymanians from doing anything. Get that out on the head. So, picture this, Mario. Take a look at our main road map. It looks like a 6. It looks like a 6 on the back, right? Like a 6. I don't know. I don't know what the map looked like, but I'll take a look at it, Jonathan, for sure, and see if you're right. But yeah. So I guess Sustainable Cayman need to rename their platform and call it Unsustainable Cayman, because it seems like anything that any Caymanian want to do is offensive to them, and they objecting. I don't get it. Yes, there are some things that need to be brought to the highlight and need to be, held accountable for, and I don't have a problem with that. But the problem is that when you have people who heading it for the wrong reasons, that's where it goes south. Believe me when I tell you. And I don't have a problem at all saying what I got to say about those sort of institutions who are not in the best interest, and other than themselves. They're not in the best interest of the island on the whole. They just want how they want to see Cayman involved. And I can tell you, if they had their way, none of us wouldn't be here. I can tell you that. That I can tell you. But one of the things that I think we need to also focus on right now, because there's a huge shift in. I see CUC put out sent out an email saying that there's been some adjustments to the fuel consumption and the cost and whatnot. And I'm reading it, but there's going to be a huge shift in the fuel distribution in the next couple of months, only because I keep abreast to all the stuff that's happening, especially with the major producers and who they have prioritized distribution to. Earlier last year, when they had that whole issue with the Ukraine, we noticed where a lot of countries start to follow suit on what America did by blacklisting the Russian businesses and whatnot. And I asked the question. I said, well, because Putin making some boneheaded mistakes, that mean every Russian investor is a bad investor? I couldn't figure that out, because I don't think, and it's a man. I tell you, it's confusing because it's a complex thing, because not because Jeffrey Dahmer was a serial killer that ate people mean that every American was. You didn't look at every American that way, did you? No. So I just find it hypocritical, especially when it comes from America and everybody who follows suits. I mean, come on, it's just ridiculous. We got to start calling a spade a spade. And I really hope that we can prioritize the continuity, sustainability of our people, and put some emphasis and resources towards that, because we have struggling people here, struggling. You think the people who run Sustainable Cayman gives a hell about anybody coming from the Eastern Districts in traffic? They don't, because they don't have to do it. They don't have to do it. I can assure you that if they had lived in the Eastern District and had worked a 9 to 5 and didn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth, they'd be singing a different tune. And that's the thing that really pisses me off, is that every single one of them that you see involved with this is those that don't have to worry about nothing financially. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. They should just pack up their bags and just go home and sit on their porch and don't come off their porch. Stay there unless you got something positive to contribute. Tired of the people coming here telling us what we should and shouldn't do. I don't go to England and tell them when they should build a house and how they should build it and where they should build it and why they should build it. I don't go do that. I can't do that. So why we allow them to come here and tell us that? Or try to tell us that? Or dictate to us what we should and shouldn't do? I heard a statement made by one of the panelists that was on that platform. And it was the first time that I heard anybody on any panel ever say it. And she said, we want to be proactive and not reactive. Hence the reason why we chose to do all of these studies and do this road show to find out what's going on so we can have a better view of how the public feels, so we don't have to go do something and then have to react to it. And I thought that, and you heard me say that many, many times here, I just thought that was very refreshing to hear. So if we're going to build a road, let's just make sure we can do it in the most sustainable way and the most environmentally friendly way. I don't have a problem with that. But one thing I know that need to happen is we need to build that road. End of story. So for all of those who don't like it, that's your prerogative. We just letting you know that you're going to have to get used to knowing that road going in. Now, you got a lot of Caymanians who that road going through their land and whatnot. And some of them were there in the audience last night. They didn't comment. They just came to see what was going on. But the thing is that I know some of them are against it. But I have to say to myself, there's a land compulsory law that once government deem that land is in the best interest of the development and the importance of the country, then they can use that property and pay the person for it, because they've done it already. They've done it in the past. It's been done. So at the end of the day, we need to get this road, and the only way to get it is to go through this exercise with the EIAs and the public consultation and whatnot. And that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do. But I do know that we need that road, and I support doing the EIA report so that we can figure out the best way to do it. And once we do that, let's get going. Let's get that road done. The next challenge that road gonna have is the aggregate, because you're gonna need aggregate to do it. So we need to make sure that we can price the aggregate at a reasonable cost where it's not as impactful to the government, because essentially the government is us. So whatever it costs the government, it costs us. And people need to start to understand that and digest that and comprehend that for what that is. The government is the people. So whatever it costs government, it costs the people. It's our cost. So, but anyway, because we started late this morning and I have a few other engagements that I'm already obligated to, I'm gonna have to sign off early. But Friday, hopefully, I can have this technical stuff worked out. We got less green on the screen than we did the last 2 times, and it looks a lot better than Monday. So we're going to continue to work on it. I have the spotlight off, which is why it's in here is a little bit darker than usual. But yeah, what we need to do now is focus on reducing the cost of living, making sure that they implement proper fuel regulation, make sure that the energy policy is submitted and implemented and enforced. We need to make sure that we allow and engage with a third provider to provide fuel in this country to CUC, because it's going to reduce the cost, which will then essentially bring down the cost to the other 2 providers, which is going to benefit the consumer. It doesn't change the bottom line dollar at CUC, because they're charging you per kilowatt hour anyway. It's just the fuel. It's the fuel factor that we want to reduce the cost on. And I want to find out, I need somebody in OFREG to champion the investigation on what this alternative surcharge is on our bill. I need to know why we paying it, what we paying for, who gonna own it, how long we gonna own it, how long we gonna pay for it, and why, who gave them permission to buy it and forcing us to pay for it. I don't understand how you can just put something on my bill and then we just pay it, and if we don't pay it, they turn us off. I want to know why in the world I pay an alternative energy surcharge when I don't have one single solitary solar panel or anything alternative on any place that I live. I don't understand. Why am I paying for something that I didn't agree to buy? And the fact that I'm paying for it, I don't see no ownership. I don't got no papers that say, Mario, you own 1/3 of this or 2% or whatever. I don't have it. So I need somebody at OFREG in that new consumer committee. Let's go find out what in the world they're collecting that alternative energy for. What is it for? I need to know. And who doing an audit? Who doing an audit on the cost of maintenance of the grid to make sure that money is collected is not only efficient, but what happens to the rest of it? I want to know how much money is being annually made from the data link company that CUC owns that charges every other utility to use the grid. And I want to know what that money is being used on. Does it go straight to their shareholders and that goes into their profit, to their pocket? Okay, if that's the case, I need to know. I want to know how it is that we paying 100% pass-through costs. Now listen to me good. I want to know, consumer committee at OFREG, why is it we paying 100% pass-through costs for all petroleum products that generates electricity that pumps through a grid that we pay for and maintain, because we bought the grid after Hurricane Ivan. We paid for it before that too, but we paid to repair it and we pay to maintain it. Now, how is it that we paying to maintain a grid that the people who collecting the money from Data Link, who uses our grid, takes all the profit? How come the people isn't given money from Data Link? Because we paid for the grid, we maintain the grid, and by God, it's on our land. So why is it that CUC carrying home all the money from Data Link? Can somebody answer that question? They got enough Caymanians working over there with the engineering degrees and all of their financial degrees. Please tell the Johnny public, where does the money from Data Link go and who it go to and why we not getting none of it? Because we paid for the grid, we technically own the grid, and we pay to maintain the grid. But we don't benefit from the grid. Oh, Mario, sorry, you get electricity on the grid that I pay kilowatt hours to get. So we really don't benefit from the grid. Some changes need to be made in this country. And I don't care how many glossy flyers CUC send out. I don't care how much public relation they send out. I don't care. That shouldn't be what we accept as a price for what we are paying. No. We need to own the grid, we need to benefit from the grid, and we need to be able to allow competition to distribute on the grid. That way, the consumer can get fair prices. Because right now, it's free for all. They do whatever they want. Every time you look on your bill, there's a charge on it, and you don't know what it's for. Because I still don't know what this alternative. I mean, I could make a pretty good guess why we paying an alternative surcharge, because CUC bought a 5 megawatt solar grid, solar farm up in Bodden Town that pumps to the grid. So I can't imagine that we are paying for that, but yet we're not benefiting from the offset cost that 5 megawatts produce. And how long are we gonna pay for it? And when we pay for it, why we don't own it? Why we don't own it? Why it's not in our name, the sovereignty? Why? Anyway, I'll leave you all with that until Friday. Please don't forget to like and share our page. Tell your friend. We're having some issues. I don't know if it's an issue, but normally when we go live, everybody who watches this show always used to get an alert. I don't know what's happening now. They're not getting the alert. I don't know if it's the format change in Facebook. I'm going to investigate it to see whether or not I can get that sorted. But for some reason, the word of mouth gone live alert isn't going out to the people who normally used to watch the show. Because when I see them, they ask me what happened. I said, well, we had a couple of shows this week. And they're like, oh, but We didn't even know. They didn't get an alert. And a lot of people is telling me that. So we need to get that fixed. We definitely need to get that fixed. But Friday, I got a couple of things I want to talk about, and we need to start putting some pressure on the government and all of the institutions that are around this place that is causing the consequences that we got to live in. We got to stop this now. Everybody got to be held accountable. And again, for all of you people who have been allowed to call Cayman home and have been allowed to call yourself a Caymanian, whenever you see anything that is beneficial for the continuity and sustainability of generational Caymanians, keep on the mouth shut. Go home, cook on a steak, and be quiet. Okay? They're not interested in hearing you on your little perch telling us what we can and can't do. Because I can't go to where I come from and tell them what to do, when to build a house, when to build a plaza, where to put a road, where not to put a road. Go home. And just be happy you're living in one of the best destinations in the world. Be grateful and thankful. You all have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you on Friday.
We got to break Sariba up. Sariba is a cartel.
We have to own our grid because we paid for it. You had it too long. That's number one. We need to control the purchasing of fuel because we pay for it. We should be in charge of buying it. The fuel companies, you better buckle up too. Jackson Point pipeline have to be reverted back to the ownership of the country. Oh, Mario, you can't tell them how to operate their business. Well, yes, we can. Having this idea that you're going to impose what's best because of what the law tells you can do will cause an uprising in this country that you've never seen before. My children are going to be saddled with the debt of a billionaire so that he can have his name printed on everything we got around here. Because let me tell you something, this is Dart Island.